Radha Madhava Kunya Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunya Bihari. So this morning is today is the disappearance day of Srila Vrindavan Das Thakur. That few words about Srila Vrindavan Das Thakur. He was in his childhood. Narayana Devi, the niece of Shiva's Pandit, became mad with love of God upon receiving the mercy of Sri Gauranga Mahaprabhu. Yes. I remember it's in the Chaitanya Bhagavata or in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Narayani was 2-3 years old. And she was in the house of Shiva's Pandit, and Lord Chaitanya touched her, and she became and started to ecstatically chant Krishna's names in love of God after being touched by Lord Chaitanya. So there it is said, she became mad with love of God upon receiving the mercy of Sri Gauranga Mahaprabhu. Later she gave birth to Vrindavan Das, who was the last disciple of Sri Nityananda Prabhu. So he was a disciple of Nityananda. On his guru's order, he wrote Sri Chaitanya Bhagavat. I remember that he named first his book Sri Chaitanya Mangal, but later changed it to Sri Chaitanya Bhagavat. Because Lochan Das Thakur has also a book, and that's Sri Chaitanya Mangal. Anyway, it is practically a law among Vaishnava writers like Sri Rupa Goswami, Sri Sanatana Goswami, Krishnadas Kaviraj, and Vrindavan Das Thakur to keep themselves in the background. They never mention anything about their family lineage or personal history. The authors of the best written and most reliable verses collected in Sri Rupa Goswami's Pajavali remain unknown. During the 16th century, entire books of exceptional transcendental prose and poetry were penned by prideless Vaishnavas, preferring to remain anonymous. Feeling utmost humility, such Vaishnava writers express themselves only in relation to their preceptors. Krishnadas Kaviraj glorifies his gurus at the end of each chapter of Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. Sri Rupa Raghunatha Padi Yare As Chaitanya Charitamrita Kai Krishnadas, praying at the lotus feet of Sri Rupa and Sri Raghunath, always desiring his mercy. I, Krishnadas, narrate Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita following in their footsteps. Sri Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami shows his supreme homage and gratitude by honoring Vrindavan Das Thakur with the appellation Vyas in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Antya Lila, Chapter 12, text 82, we find Vrindavan Das Thakur is Lord Nityananda's favorite devotee, and therefore is the original Vyasadeva in describing the pastimes of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. As Srila Vyasadeva told Krishna's pastimes in the Bhagavatam and other Puranas, Srila Vrindavan Das Thakur described Chaitanya Lila in Chaitanya Bhagavat. The humble heart of Krishna Das Kaviraj pours out more praises of Vrindavan Das Thakur. Hearing Chaitanya Bhagavat destroys all misfortune. By reading Chaitanya Bhagavat, one will understand the glories of Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda, and he will attain the highest perfection of knowledge, pure love of Krishna. Such a wonderful book could not be written by a human being. It seems that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself has spoken it through the mouth of Sri Vrindavan Das Thakur. I offer a million of respectful obeisances to the lotus feet of Vrindavan Das Thakur. By compiling such a valuable book, he has delivered everyone from the cycle of birth and death. So that's from Srila Krishna Das Kaviraj in Chaitanya Charitamrita. So at Mangachi in Modat Rupadvip, Navadvip, Vrindavan Das Thakur established deities of Nitai Gauranga and Sri Jagannath Dev. He lived there as a celibate and worshipped his beloved deities. Vrindavan Das had many disciples, including Gopinath Brahmachari, a descendant of Sri Keshav Bharati. In Krishna's pastimes, Vrindavan Das Thakur is Srila Vyasadeva. His samadhi is in the 64 samadhis areas. Let's go for that. Hare Krishna. So now, okay, let's have a look. Here. So now we will first go to a summary of this canto with slides. So first the slides. We have the first slide here. Yeah. So the 10th canto is called Divisions of the Creation. And there are 10 creations described here, 10 divisions. And we will look at each division. So first one, that the first creation which we see here is the creation of the Mahatattva, the sum total of the material ingredients, the interaction of the modes of material nature is the cause of false identification. So all that is the sarga, the creation of all the elements. Next slide. The second creation, which we heard about, is the creation of ahankara, a false ego. It is by the false ego, and by attachment and aversion to this body and this world, we are identifying with the body, mind, with the body and the mind. So it is said here, material resources are the capacity and knowledge to work are all generated in the second term of the creation after the Mahatattva. That's okay. That's the only one I don't have here. So, yes. So first, the ingredients have been created of the material nature, and then later on, that this second creation of false ego, because this Mahatattva, that it starts with this Mahavishnu. From Mahavishnu's pores come all the universes, and then he enters each universe as Garbhodakashayi Vishnu. He starts to sweat, and half of the universe fills with his sweat water. and he likes the sound of it. And yes, but before that happens, then all, because this universal cells, they are made from all the elements. So first, all the elements are created. So the creation starts with Mahavishnu glancing, and by his glance, he put the three modes of nature unmanifested within Brahman. And these three modes, they are in balance. Are the three modes goodness, passion, ignorance, sattva, rajas, tamas, and they are in balance, peaceful, but they are there. He put that in Brahman. And then he injects the living entities and he injects time by his glance. And the living entities, when they enter, they come to, these souls come to this material world to enjoy. So they have the desire to enjoy. By their desire to enjoy, this equilibrium of these three modes breaks, and this start to move. And then from that, the first element appears, and that is false ego, ahankar, that appears. And when ahankar combines with the mode of goodness, then from that the mind is created and the demigods covering the mind. And when passion combines with false ego, then intelligence is created, buddhi, and all the demigods governing buddhi. Because buddhi, we need intelligence to enjoy, so it's in passion. Does not mean that our intelligence must remain in passion. And then from that Mahatattva, when this Mahatattva, when false ego combines with tamas, ignorance, it creates earth, air, ether, water, fire. Anyway, but the creation starts based on this ahankara, which comes from the living entities. We have been injected by Mahavishnu in the Mahatattva. That was the previous division, Mahatattva. And then it starts to move. And now we go to the third creation. That's the sense perceptions are created. All the senses, the information gathering senses. We see on the screen the nose, the ear, the eyes, genitals, and the tongue. The touch and tongue. Yeah. Okay. Then the fourth creation of knowledge and working capacity. That's subtle. And the fifth creation, and the creation of the controlling deities by interaction of the modes of goodness, of which the mind is a sum total. So all the demigods are created. 33 million demigods. It's a lot. Who are controlling the universe. But it is said that there are three sets of demigods. It's not that Brahma creates all demigods. When the shells of the universe are formed in the beginning, before Garbhoddakashaya, Vishnu enters, if the shells of the universe are formed, then together with the creation of these shells, demigods, presiding demigods of these shells of the universe are created. Yeah, so we know there are 8 coverings made of Bhumi, Rapanalor, Kam, Mana, Buddha, Vasha. All the elements are there. And that one is double than the other, and that's all explained in detail in the Bhagavatam. But yes, all these demigods are created. And so the first set of demigods is in the shells of the universe. The second of sets of demigods are created when false ego combines with goodness, creates the mind, and the demigods governing the mind, it is said. And the same thing, if false ego combines with passion, it creates buddhi, intelligence, and the demigods governing that. And then, of course, we have the mode of ignorance combines with false ego and creates ether and sound, and then from that, yeah. Then when it combines further with fire, there is form, and first is air and touch. Anyway, that's a whole thing described. So there are different kinds of demigods, but these are the demigods created by Brahma. That's the third set. Sixth creation, next one. Yes. And so the sixth creation is the ignorant darkness of the living entity, by which the master acts as a fool. So the darkness is created, that the Devis are situated in the mode of goodness of material nature, Asuras are in the mode of passion, and the demigods are assistants of the Lord in the management of material affairs. So this darkness, which is of three kinds, that ignorance, passion, and goodness. That's okay. The next, so this goes deeper in that. The living entities are under the influence of material nature by avidya, the darkness of ignorance. For devotees, the Lord engaged in pure devotional service. This energy becomes vidya, or pure knowledge. So devotees transform this energy. The energy of the Lord transforms from Maya to Yoga Maya and appears to pure devotees in a real feature. Interesting. It's the same energy, but it appears as Maya or Yoga Maya. But the devotees transform it, spiritualize. So there are 5 forms of illusion of the conditioned souls: attachment, hatred, pride, ignorance, and false identification. Okay, the 7th creation. These are the trees and so on. Well, this creation, just a reminder, we have heard in the beginning of this chapter that Brahma created first the 4 Kumaras. And then they didn't want to cooperate, they became angry, and Lord Shiva and 12 Rudras appears and so on. But then these divisions come from descendants of Kashyapa Muni, who has different wives, and different of his wives are producing different living entities. So we have here immovable living entities are created. Fruit, trees without flowers, trees, plants which exist until the ripe is ripe, the creepers, and then pipe plants, creeper which have no support, trees with flowers and fruits. Next slide. All the immovable trees and plants seek their subsistence upwards. They are almost unconscious, but they have feelings of pain within. That's interesting information. They are manifested in variegatedness. So always be kind with the plants. That, of course, some of them we have to offer to Krishna. We use for making preparations. Then 8th creation describes 28 lower species of life. The previous one. Oh, no, it's okay. It's okay. I'm wrong here. So here, 28 lower species of life. First, yeah. See here. Wild animals such as tigers can be tamed simply by regular supplying meals and accommodations for sleeping, Srila Prabhupada. It is, yeah, that's in the verse. The knowledge does not reach further than, their knowledge does not reach further than eating and sleeping. These 28 lower species. And who are these species? We see in the next slide. That, so the most pure among the animals have 2 hooves. The cow, the goat, the buffalo, Krishna's stag, the hog, Gavaya, animal, deer, lamb, and camel. And those with 1 hoof is the horse, the mule, ass, the gaura, which is a kind of deer, the saraba bison or bison, and wild cow. And then further we have some pictures of this. Yeah, the previous one. The next one. Okay, this one, yeah. That, yeah, okay. Animals have 5 nails. The dog, jackal, tiger, fox, cat, rabbit, sajaru, lion, monkey, elephant, tortoise, alligator, goshapa, etc. Next slide. That, then the birds, the heron, the vulture, the crane, the hawk, basa, baluka, peacock, swan, sarasa, sakravaka, crow, and owl. So these are the verses we will discuss today, right hereafter. But then you have the creation of the humans. That I won't read it because we will discuss this first now. And there will be one more creation in this verse. That's the next slide. That's the creation of the demigods. Last slide. So 8 varieties of demigods created by Lord Brahma. The Siddhas, they travel to space without spacecraft, just by desire. They are more advanced in arts and culture than the residents of the earth. They possess brains superior to those of human beings. That's what the Bhagavatam says. So that's a summary. And now we can go to the chapter. So today we will discuss verse 22 till the 26. 26 says a purport, but I will not read all these verses because I read them already on the screen. That it's just all these 28 lower species. The text 26 you can put on. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Arvakshotastu Navama. Kshatareka Vidonrinam. Rachodika Karma Para. Duke Cha Sukhamanina. Arvakshotastu Navama. Kshatareka Vidonrinam. Rachodika Karma Para. Dukesha Sukhamanina. Arvakshotastu Navama. Kshatareka Vidonrinam. Rachodika Karma Para. Dukesha Sukhamanina. Arvakshotastu Navama. Kshatareka Vidonrinam. Rachodika Karma Para. Dukesha Sukhamanina. Avakshotastu Navama. Shakareta Vidonrinam. Rachodika Karma Para. Dukesha Sukhamanina. Avakshotastu Navama. Kshatareka Vidonrinam. Rachodika Karma Para. Dukesha Sukhamanina. Word for word translation. Arvak, downwards. Shota, passage of food. To, but. Navama, the ninth. Kshata, Ovidura, Ekovidaha, one species. Drinam, of human beings. Raja, the mode of passion. Adhikaha, very prominent. Karma para, interested in working. Dukkhe, in misery. Cha, but. Sukha, happiness. Manina, thinking. The creation of human beings who are of one species only and who stock their eatables in the belly is the ninth in the rotation. In the human race, the mode of passion is very prominent. Humans are always busy in the midst of miserable life, but they think themselves happy in all respects. Purport. The human being is more passionate than the animals, and thus the sex life of the human being is more irregular. The animals have their due time for sexual intercourse, but the human has no regular time for such activities. The human being is endowed with a higher, advanced stage of consciousness for getting relief from the existence of material miseries. But due to his ignorance, he thinks that this higher consciousness is meant for advancement in the material comforts of life. Thus his intelligence is misused in animal propensities, eating, sleeping, defending, and mating, instead of spiritual realization. By advancing in material comforts, the human being puts himself into a more miserable condition. By delusion by the material energy, he always thinks himself happy, even while in the midst of misery. Such misery of human life is distinct from the natural comfortable life enjoyed even by the animals. So read the verse again. Avakshotastu navama kshatariko vidanrinam Kachodika kama paradokesa sukamanina. The creation of the human beings were of one species only, and we stock their eatables in the belly, is the ninth in the rotation. In the human race, the mode of passion is very prominent. Humans are always busy in the midst of miserable life, but they think themselves happy in all respects. Omajana Timanasya Chinansala Smaka Shakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shigurave Nama Chitchetanya Manopistam Staptam Yena Bhutalishvam Rabkadamyam Dadati Svapadantikam Vandiyam Shiru Shiyuda Padakamalam Shirum Vaishnavamsha Shirupam Jagajatam Saganaraganatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parjana Saitam Shri Krishna Chaitanya Dharapam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Saganalita Shifishakam Vitam Sahe Krishna Karuna Sinudina Banda Chatpate Kopesha Kopram Kanta Radha Kanta Namastati Tapta Kansana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishabhana Sutta Devi Panamama Hari Priya Vancha Kalpta Vishakri Pasan Vishapat Nampavan Bhyo Vaishnabhyo Namonam Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Jai Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Vastaya Bhutali Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Tinamani Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharani Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paskachai Trisatani Srila Prabhupada Ki. In the Bhagavad Gita, Srila Prabhupada mentioned, well, Lord Krishna mentioned in the 7th chapter, 4 kinds of beings who do not surrender unto him. And one of them is the Naradam, if I remember. The Naradam is social and politically advanced and thinks him happy in all respects. Srila Prabhupada said the Naradams, he says in the right side in the purport, the Naradams 99.9% of the population. That's a lot. The Naradams. And this mentality we find here also described in the purport, that they think themselves happy even in the midst of misery. So this is a description of the human beings that from the Bhagavatam, and it's very interesting to look from a distance at this human race being, having a human body. That so they are always very busy in the midst of miserable life, but they think themselves happy in all respect. That so yes, this is what the illusion. When Yudhishthira Maharaj was asked that question by the Yaksham, what is the most amazing thing? Then Yudhishthira Maharaj replies, everyone is trying to become happy in this world, and they try to settle them permanently in this world. That And that is the illusion. They are so busy with trying to advance in material comforts that they forget that finally it's all for nothing. Because at the end you have to leave your body. You lose the body and all the comforts are for the body. So yes, although this material life is very miserable, still they think themselves happy. And that is interesting, that this is the power of material nature and being conditioned, that we think we are controlled by this body, we are the slave of this body, that you cannot say, oh, I have to pass stool, I don't do it. No, you have to. We are controlled in so many ways that, and we don't, and the question does not come up by these Naradams, why am I suffering? Why am I in that situation? They just think themselves happy. And that is most amazing. But the Bhagavatam explains, and Bhagavad Gita also, that this material world is dukkhalayam ashasvatam. That Srila Prabhupada makes that point, that one must be totally convinced that there is no happiness in this world. An outsider will say, but that is really pessimistic. Yes, from the materialistic point of view, we are most pessimistic. That's true. But on the other side, we are the most optimistic because we understand we are eternal souls. That the body dies, but we don't die. And that's good news. But of course, this is the influence of the modes of material nature. That we know that Indra was cursed in here to become a hawk, and then he didn't want to leave his hawk body. Brahma said, "You have to come back, take your post." Yes, but Indra at the body of a hawk, and he was thinking, "No, I'm happy. I'm taking care of my children, my little pigs." It's just the illusion is so strong that and this, the meaning of conditions. Where does this conditioning come from? That it is a pollution of our consciousness. That the soul has nothing to do with the material energy. The soul cannot suffer because we identify with the body, that through the pollution of our consciousness, this false ego comes. And we identify. And we experience the suffering of the body as our suffering. And that's experienced through the mind. So identification with the mind is very, very dangerous. But to come out of this conditioning, we need to purify our existence. Yeah. Sattva samsuddhir, striving for purification of one's existence. But to strive for purification of one's existence, one must be first know what's the contamination, what is the illusion. what do I need to purify? Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, the lust is sitting in the body, that in the mind, the intelligence, the mind, the senses, that and it can only be purified by using our mind and senses in the service of the Lord. Intelligence, mind and senses, body, mind and words in the service of the Lord. That so he thinks himself happy while in the midst of misery. And sometimes we get a little relief. You have a nice meal and then some rasgullas, and then you feel you feel good for a moment. But it doesn't last long. And that is the illusion. Yeah, it's Krishna says it's in Bhagavad Gita. It's explained by the sages. Sages have concluded that if you enjoy in this world, this so-called feeling of happiness, then you have to suffer. That and it's not worthwhile. It's all temporary. Building sand castles. That, but a devotee knows, yes, this body is temporary, and he uses it in Krishna's service, but further forgets about it. That it doesn't take the body too serious. Remember when Sridhar Maharaj arrived in Mayapur, that I told that yesterday during the class, Shishapanishad class, I think. Sridhar Maharaj, when he was in his last days, he went from Canada to Mayapur, right? And we were all to receive him in Mayapur. I was there. There was thousands of devotees were receiving Sridhar Maharaj in Mayapur. And then he was later in his room and he fell unconscious for some time. And the doctor came, and that's what I heard. And everyone was sitting in the room around him, and the doctor had put a stethoscope on his belly because his belly was by a lot of water by the disease, liver disease, was big. And he put his stethoscope on his belly. And at that moment, Sridhar Maharaj came to consciousness, and he said, you know what he said? He said to the doctor, "Is it a boy or a girl?" So it was really always, even in that condition, he was joyful. He was joyful that transcending this miserable conditions of material life. So Krishna consciousness is the way to get real happiness, the happiness of the soul, that making this body happy, that will not help us, that a nice feeling in the mind, but transcendental happiness, Krishna consciousness, that so a part of our philosophy, our preaching should be wake them up, get out of this illusion that this body is not going to last, and there is no happiness in this world, the pessimist side. But we have also to preach the positive, that be Krishna conscious and connect with Krishna, and so that we again identify with our real identity, our spiritual identity, that, and then we will experience this higher happiness, Krishna consciousness. So that's what I could say on this verse, and which is an interesting description of humans. And it's very correct. Everyone in the world. These are the humans. Hare Krishna. Any comments, please? Yes, Maharaj.
You mentioned about how, as long as one has some hope for material happiness, consciousness doesn't take hold in their lives. And I was thinking there's a nice verse in the first canto, chapter 8, text 26. Janmaishvarya Shritashri.
Yeah.
Where Kunti Devi says that, if one is trying to advance themselves by, various material means, feeling all out. So that's, I think, something that's very true, that the material progress, as long as one is convinced that there is such a thing as material, certain that somewhere out there is material happiness, that person will never take to Krishna consciousness.
Yes, thank you, Maharaj. You quoted this verse. Shanmashva Shutashva Edamana Madampunam Naivratadartavam Tvamakinshana Gocham. From Queen Kunti, there are 4 intoxications: beauty, education, a nice birth, and opulence, wealth. These are intoxications. It is true that as long as we are attached to sense gratification, we cannot go to the spiritual world, because in the spiritual world is no sense gratification. So we will not be happy there if we are still attached to sense gratification. And these are 4 strong forms of sense gratification, which we have to leave behind. But of course, it doesn't block us or prevent us, if we are still attached to these things, to practice Krishna consciousness. We can practice Krishna consciousness and still feel satisfied if we do it properly. Properly, practicing Krishna consciousness means the proper motive, the proper desire. If the desire is right, Anyabilasa Sunyam Gyan Karmatanavanam Anakuliyana Krishna Nushilnam Bhakta Uttama, then we will feel satisfied if we do it purely for the pleasure of Krishna, nothing else. But if we perform devotional service and we say, this for Krishna, this for me, this for Krishna, this for me, then this satisfaction will not take place. Yeah. Does it make sense? Yeah. Something else? Yes, Maharaj, please.
Yeah, I asked Maharaj before, but the wives of Kashyapa Muni creating the animals, is there any explanation how they did that? Anyway.
Yeah, I must say, Maharaj, I've never seen a description of these wives. No, we do.
Sons of, they were beautiful girls.
Yeah.
And he's a beautiful man.
Yeah, I think they were the daughters of the devotee in Kardama. Most of them, I think. Yeah. For me, it's very mystical. Not Shintya, inconceivable how they did it. But of course, we see Brahma is creating from the mind. But here, I don't know. That's a mystery. Yeah.
I don't think it's something like John and Beth.
No. Thank you. Good. Anything else? Yes, Maharaj.
Before I came to Krishna consciousness, I was living in San Francisco, California. And previously I had spent about 2 or 3 months in Los Angeles, maybe more than that. And I'd lived with a friend of mine. And so I'd lived with him that whole time. And then when I moved to San Francisco, he came up to visit me in San Francisco. And, when he first came up, I decided, well, I'll show you around San Francisco what I know about it, because he'd never been in San Francisco before. And I said, what would you like to do? And I mentioned a couple of different things. And he said, well, what I'd really like to do is go to a shindig that the Hare Krishna devotees are having in Golden Gate Park today.
Yeah.
And I thought, that's strange. I hadn't heard anything like that. And I was not at all interested in going, but because he was the guest and I was the host, I thought, following that basic protocol, well, I should do what he wanted to do. So we did that. And I lived a block and a half away from Golden Gate Park. So I was right next door to it. So we went there, and the Rath Yatra was just getting set up. And all the usual suspects were there in San Francisco, just like here in New York. You have people that always go to, like Tompkins Square, or always go to Washington Square. You have the usual hangers out. In Golden Gate Park, is the same kind of thing there. That was the one and only time that I ever saw Prabhupada. And, I had no idea who Prabhupada was. I'd never heard about him. I did know a little bit about Krishna consciousness. But, here I was at this festival, and suddenly Prabhupada appears. And I've told that story many times, so I'm just going to sort of tag by it. But after it was over, I said to my friend, his name was Dan Lucanville, and I said to him, oh, great, it's over now, we can go back. He goes, no, let's go to the temple. I thought, oh, I thought this was over already. Now we're going to have to go to the temple too. And so he knew where it was, and we went down the N Judah to, Valencia Street, where the temple was there, in what's called the Mission in San Francisco, just south of Market Street. And when we got there, there was a devotee giving class, a Bhagavad Gita class. And this is how it becomes relevant to what we're talking about today. And he was sitting on the Vyasasana, and he said, and if you think there is any happiness in the material world, you are an animal. And he said it just like that. And I thought, my God, like my hair was singed and my socks had melted away. And I felt, these people are the most pessimistic people in the world. And I was convinced, that I didn't want to have anything to do with this, but of course, what he was actually inferring was this fact that what we were talking about today, but just his delivery was incredible. And, because at that time I had no idea who devotees were or anything like that. I have no idea who this devotee was who said that. But at any rate, we can see that it bears out the same point, that if you're convinced that somewhere there's happiness, and at that time I was convinced that there is such a thing as happiness in the material world. So I didn't come to Krishna consciousness for about 1.5 years after that, until Krishna mercifully revealed to me that there is no such thing as material happiness in the material world. There are small peanuts and raisins of gratification that you get here and there, but nothing that resembles actual sense gratification.
Hare Krishna. Thank you for sharing that, man. Good. Shantara Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Srila Prabhupada ki. Yeah, sure.